Oh, good evening. Welcome to Show Woodworking DIY with me, Roderick. Today, I'll be showing you how I made this awesome little bookmark stand that I made in only just 2 days. Can you believe it? Let's jump right in the video and I show you how I made this thing. Let's go.
So, there's 2 ways that you can make a triangle out of wood. There is this easier one, where you just cut 60-degree angles on a table saw or miter saw, then you glue it up and you're done. Then there's the way I did mine, which has 30-degree acute angles here, as you can see. The problem is that the table saw blade can only cut angles from 90 to 45 degrees. That's where this jig of mine that I'm busy making comes into play. It can cut more sharper angles further than 45 degrees. I really like the way the sharp angle looks. That's why I wanted to give it a try, even though it's a bit more complex. But it's very easy once you have this jig. The dimensions of your jig will be determined by the size of your fence. You will need a 42 by 40 centimeter piece of plywood to make this bookmark stand. The first piece will be 18 centimeters wide, and then the next one will be 20 centimeters wide. The 18 centimeter wide one will be the one where the book sits on. So the base looked a little tall, so I had to cut it down to 30 centimeters. It helps a lot to visualize at every step when you finish to make sure that you're still on track. So that's where I'll be putting the cup. Plywood edges are not always pleasing to the eye, so I used some hardwood trim that I had left over a couple weeks ago where I was making a endgrain chopping board for my mom. I use mostly painter's tape throughout this project as my clamps. Painter's tape is pretty strong enough to hold the edge banding until the glue dries up properly. So on the 18mm piece, as you can see on this one, you only apply the edge banding on the long edges, and then on the base platform I edge banded all around on the 4 sides. We then have to give the glue a little time to set, then we go on to sanding, starting from 80 grit all the way up to 220 grit on both pieces. I really love how useful my new crosscut sled is, especially this flip up stop block. So we have to freshen up one edge and square it up. And then we can cut equal 19 centimeter pieces. Things seem to be coming together very well. Then I visualized where I would try and put the cup holder. So I don't have a Forstner bit big enough to hold a cup, so I improvised and used this 75mm hole saw. So I marked and drilled a pilot hole that will assist my hole saw to drill in the center. So I drilled in about 5mm in with the hole saw, not all the way through. Then I went on and used my router to hog out the rest of the material that was left inside. And I had a nice cup holder. And you know me, I had to visualize at every step to make sure that I'm still on track since it's the first time I'm making these. Now it's time for the tricky angles we've all been waiting for. Having a digital angle gauge is quite useful at this point. We need to set our blade to 60.4 degrees. So this is needed, the 0.4 is needed to help to have a tighter joint on the outside surface. I did a few practice runs to make sure that I will be safe when using my new jig. And I noticed that my spring clamp won't be able to hold the material on the distal end. So I had to make this cutout to make sure that my clamp can fit. So, if you want tight joints, you need to make sure that your jig is just kissing the blade, followed by making sure that your workpiece is at the same level as the jig. Then you can go on to starting to cut. You go slowly, you push on the outside of the jig to make sure that your fingers are safe. That's why we're using clamps. Nice and slowly. And then you got your 30-degree cut. Then we do the same process to the other piece. Yep, I need to make sure that I did a good job, which is good. We're still not done yet. We still need to make a 60-degree cut on the base of these boards. So you cut here to the final length. Ours is 16.5 centimeters. This will make sure that it sits flush on the base of this bookmark stand, as you can see. I would really appreciate if you can smash that like button for me. It helps a lot to get my video spread out there so more people can see it. Thanks. Let's go on and make a groove for our pencil. Here we'll use a V-groove bit to make this indent. And since the router leaves some rough edges, we need to deburr those edges with some sandpaper. Then our pencil groove is done. Time for my favorite part, the glue up. After working on your wood for so long, you get to see it come together. So you need to apply glue generously to the edges of the plywood and leave it a little bit to soak in, and you do the same thing to the other piece as well. Then we go on and apply these pieces onto the base. We just place them together and then we use some painter's tape to hold it together. That's all we'll be needing for the project. You need to align the edges properly and you leave the glue to set for a minimum of 4 hours. Here's a tip on how to make your joints look flawless. You apply a little bit of glue in those cracks and then you come back with the sander, you hit it down and then it will just make it seamless. We just need to freshen up with some sandpaper, we're done. I wanted the pencil groove and the cup indent to pop, so I used a dark brown paint to help with that. I'm glad that you've made it this far in my video. I'm a relatively new woodworking channel. I would really appreciate if you would hit that subscribe button for me, so you can check out the interesting projects that I have lined up. I already have a couple of awesome projects that I've made, so could you please take some time and check them out after this video. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, so I'd really love to hear your thoughts and opinions of this bookmark stand in the comments section below. Drop me a comment, I'll definitely make sure to try and respond as fast as I can.